Thank you very much, David. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be here with you and to celebrate the anniversary and accomplishments of the Public Policy Forum. Maureen is speaking to nurses in Regina, but I'm going to tell her about the standing ovation. It doesn't happen every day, and I'm delighted to be back. I couldn't help but noting what Kim said when she said how sorry she had been when Bob Rae refused to show up. Kim, you have no idea how lucky you were. You know, odd things happen when you leave high office. For one thing, the calls stop. Shortly after I retired from Parliament the first time, Maureen and I were at home in Calgary, and a very surprising thing happened. The phone rang. When I answered, a female person said, "I want to speak to Mr. or Mrs. R.T. Hon." I said, "There are no Hans here." She said, "Sir, this is your telephone company, and this phone is registered to Mr. or Mrs. R.T. Hon." Now, hard as it was, I realized that she was fixated on my title, not on me. So, that happens sometimes. So I asked, "What exactly did you want to discuss with the Hans?" And she said, "I wanted to tell them about the special privacy provisions offered by Alberta government telephones, so you wouldn't be bothered by any more crank calls." Now, I was going tonight to propose a way to solve all our economic problems, but I did that in 1979. And you all didn't seem that interested. So, sorry, the humor's going to end now. Sometimes in life the humor has to end. I'm going to speak tonight about another way in which Canadians, our governments, our businesses, our citizens, can lead in this changing world. Power among nations is changing dramatically. Goldman Sachs has projected that by 2050, the 7 largest economies in the world will contain only one Western nation, the USA, which will rank second in economic power, well behind China. Next in order would be India, Brazil, Mexico, Russia, Indonesia. Canada would rank 16th, a little behind Vietnam, a little ahead of the Philippines. That trajectory is not about anyone's decline, but rather about the rise and assertion of new strengths. And that shift is not just economic, but also political, military, diplomatic, and most significant, it is cultural. What languages, which values, What sense of community will characterize the future? I'd ask you to consider two dimensions of these changes. First, where does conflict come from in the modern world? Not much now from ideology, as in the Cold War, and not simply from poverty and inequality, but instead, so often, from culture and identity and faith. How might we respond? The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan demonstrate clearly that these conflicts cannot be resolved by mere military power or simply by the magic of the market. Many of these deadly, growing conflicts are rooted in the fear that vital values or identities are under siege. Now, such fears are as old as humankind, but they are more easily inflamed in an age when information travels so fast and so far, challenging sacred assumptions, creating new aspirations, stimulating anger or envy or extremism. The critical talents in such a world are the ability to respect and bridge conflicting identities and different values, and patiently seek enough common ground to build trust and respect and then collaboration. Ladies and gentlemen, no country in the world is better at that than Canada. And it's not a static quality. Our capacity increases as our population diversifies, making us more like the world. So the habit of common purpose, the sense of with whom we might empathize or cooperate, is larger than it was before. That is a significant asset. The second change is that the shift in power is not only between states, but from nation-states to non-state actors, like the environmental movement, non-governmental organizations, multinational corporations, foundations, and yes, organized crime and terrorism. Today, Greenpeace has more influence on public policy than most national governments. The Gates Foundation is more innovative. The Red Cross, Red Crescent employ more than 300,000 people. Of the world's 10 biggest multinational companies in 2011, ranked by Fortune Global 500, only 5, Walmart, 3 Chinese state companies, and Toyota Motors. Just have to find my place. As you age, you drop, you lose your place, you lose your capacity to come, even when you're delivering such a rapt speech. And that figure, only those 5 companies employ more people in the world than Red Cross, Red Crescent. And that is just the beginning of the list. World Vision is in 97 countries with over 40,000 staff and more than 100,000 volunteers. The NGO called BRAC, rooted in Bangladesh, is the largest non-governmental organization in the world. Amnesty International has offices in 80 countries, more national offices than most countries have embassies. These groups have more than numbers and reach. They are innovators, on the ground, able to act directly, not bound by a formal protocol which a state may have signed, or by an informal protocol requiring the approval of some official thousands of miles away. They invent new instruments. Look at microcredit. They build personal trust, which is the basis of creative partnerships, and they are not hogtied by a veto in the Security Council. But what they don't have is the authority to change the rules. Non-state organizations often have the imagination which the world needs, but only states, only governments, only nations have the mandate and the power to change laws and regulations and obligations. We need to marry mandate and imagination. Again, Canada is one of a handful of countries which in the past has been able, willing, and trusted enough to establish strong, purpose-specific partnerships with non-state organizations. Witness the International Treaty to Ban Landmines, the Campaign Against Apartheid, the Agreement on Blood Diamonds, and several other initiatives pursued by Liberal and progressive Conservative governments of Canada. Of course, these capacities to manage diversity and build partnerships are not a whole foreign policy. We have vital economic and trade and environmental and security interests to pursue. But all of those interests are in jeopardy if conflict thrives. Our skill at building partnerships and respect is a distinguishing Canadian credential. Those skills speak to the most challenging issues of the future, and they are capacities where we are not 16th in the world. Our place is among the leaders. Ironically, governments and publics today pay more attention to the world's new threats than to the world's new solutions. The disproportion is enormous between the money and attention which Western governments spend on defense and homeland security compared to their investment in the growing capacity to achieve cooperation, understanding, and tangible improvements in the conditions which give rise to violence and crime and terrorism. Canada's Maureen's not here in person, but I'm glad to know that her spirit is leading the applause when things... Canada's foreign policy has never been static. It always evolves. From Robert Borden's steady assertion of sovereignty, to Lester Pearson's creation of peacekeeping, to the trade initiatives of the 1980s. So being innovative is nothing new to Canada. There is abundant experience in this very room. Some of you may recall a recent controversy in the United States about whether foreign military assistance in Libya would be led by France and Britain rather than by the USA. A, quote, White House advisor supported that very sensible proposition, but was careless enough to describe it as leading from behind. Well, the American hawks went wild, and that description was disowned. But as power disperses in the world, so does the capacity to lead. And in almost every case, the most effective leadership will have to be shared, not only among states, but with other entities, and often with citizens. The model now should be leadership from beside. That is highly relevant to Canada and Canadians. It is what we have so often done, and it helps make the world more stable, so our citizens and our enterprises and our values might be more secure. It also defines a collaborative, respectful, innovative world in which Canadians' role, Canadians collectively, our governments, our people, our organizations, could be more important than they ever were before. Thank you very much.